Aaron, you ready to take me out?
Yeah, we're going to go out on the field, go around the town of Newmarket. We'll end up going all the way up to Rude's Hill, which is where we met a while back. But right here, you got the Stonewall Jackson Monument, and I wanted to point out, you can see the maker's mark there. That is Moses Ezekiel. He was a VMI cadet who fought here at the Battle of Newmarket. He was a Jewish cadet, one of the only Jewish members of the Virginia Military Institute at that time. But he becomes a famous sculptor after the war.
All right, well, let's head out on the battlefield.
All right, so we are in between the two major hills at the beginning of this battle. It's kind of hard to see. We'll see it from another angle. But this way is Shirley's Hill. That is the Confederate position. And behind us, this is the beginning as we start to go up the slope. This is Maynard's Hill. It's spelled, looks like Manor, but it's called Maynard's Hill. This is the Federal position. And what's going to happen is that as the battle starts, the Confederates will actually come down Shirley's Hill because they are under intense artillery fire. As they come down into the hollow here, they are now underneath that nice little part of the hill. The artillery is not hitting them. They're able to come down. And once we get up here on Maynard's Hill, I'll talk about what happens with the VMI cadets up there. But this is a neat little spot because there's artillery duels that are happening back and forth through here. The Union advance line is kind of down this way, but most of the troops will be up on top of Maynard's Hill before that. But another thing is that when this battle starts, the Confederates are not actually on Shirley's Hill to begin with. They are on a farther hill back called Williamson's Hill, and they have been trying to entice the Federals to move forward to attack them because it's a great defensive position. The commander of the Federals at that time is Augustus Moore, and he says, I'm not doing that. Does a great job here holding back the Confederates for a while Franz Sigel is moving the rest of the army this way. But the Confederates will eventually move out to Shirley's Hill, place some artillery there, and that's when the battle will really start on May 15th. So the VMI artillery during this part of the battle is actually in the rear with the cadets. They will be moving up the Valley Pike toward the other end of the battlefield, and we'll actually see a portion of where they're going to be set up during the Battle of Newmarket. So we're right here on the military crest, really, of Maynard's Hill. And you can see in the distance, that is Shirley's Hill. That is the Confederate position. You can really see it very well from here. Now, the hill at the time, of course, sloped all the way down across present-day Interstate 81. 81 was not there. But the Confederates will be in a long line out there, but they're going to be in echelon. And what that means is one behind another, kind of spread out to make them look like they have more troops. They only have about 4,100 troops versus Sigel's roughly 11,000 that could be brought to bear against the Confederates. Now, one of the neat things about where we're at is this is the skirmish line for the Federals. They will actually be farther back where the Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Museum is back here along the River Road line. And this really just gives you kind of that nice overview why they would pick this spot. While Shirley's Hill is taller, this is a great defensive place if the Confederates have to attack it. And again, the commander here is Augustus Moore in the very beginning of the battle. He does a great job of holding off the Confederates for a good amount of time until they are able to concentrate their forces. All right, so this is one of the more important parts of the battlefield that gets overlooked, and it's recently really been saved by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. But if 81 wasn't here and we were on this what looks just to be a driveway, this is actually the River Road. This is where the Federals are going to be, and it's stretched all the way across toward St. Matthew's Church, which is now on what's known as Breckinridge Lane, all the way across toward the mountain. It went all the way to the Shenandoah River. But on this road, on May 14th, there will be Federal infantry here. the Federal infantry will actually lay in this road, the 116th Ohio being one of them, will lay in this road on arms. It is a cold, dreary, nasty night. On top of that, you will have some night fighting that happens right here. On May 14th, it's heavy skirmishing, but Confederate cavalry will actually attack some of the Federals that are on this River Road line. One of the guys says that they will come up within 60 yards of our force and start firing at us. One Federal says they would unleash hell upon the Confederates as they attacked. Sometimes the only way they're really able to see is by the flashes of lightning that are occurring, because there are storms that are moving through this area May 13th, 14th, and 15th. As a matter of fact, the Battle of Newmarket will be fought during a thunderstorm. All right, so we are now on another portion of the River Road. Again, this is the Federal position on May 14th and May 15th at the beginning of the battle. There's some nighttime firing here. The story we talked about with the cows and the dog happens right through those woods. So we're really not that far from where we just were. But the River Road, there are men, again, laying in this road on their arms on the night of the 14th. But on the 15th, during the Battle of Newmarket, as the Confederates begin to advance, they will begin pushing the Federals off of Manor Hill. Behind us is the cemetery. This is St. Matthew's Cemetery over here. There is a monument to the VMI cadets here close to us, and then there's another monument out through the cemetery. But in this cemetery is Snow's battery of artillery. Of course, you have the Federals through here, and they will stretch out across the road. The Confederates will come pouring through here, pushing the Federals back toward Bush-Hong's Hill. Once this spot becomes untenable, they will fall back just a little bit farther to what's known as the Rice House, which we will go to. And there's an incident there with von Kleiser's artillery, who we will talk about a little bit later as well, as the VMI cadets are going to meet them. But some other incidents that happen here will be down on this other end. We'll go to it. So another portion is the shell-struck post down here. Now there's a replica of that, and it still shows a replica of a shell in the post. But the story is that Breckinridge, commander of the Confederate Army here, and some of his staff are out on Route 11, the Valley Pike, right next to the church over here, and that a shell from a Union artillery piece hits a post but doesn't explode. It just makes the post explode in a way. Could have really changed the battle. Had that shell exploded, would have killed Breckinridge, but instead they get a lot of splinters thrown all over them. All right, so here's the post I was talking about, the shell-struck post. As you can see, there's a replica shell in it. It's been repainted recently, and there's even a little cannon on top. But this is the sign here says it's a genuine relic, because it's hit by a 3-inch piece of ordnance during the battle, after Snow's artillery has actually moved back toward the rice farm. On top of it, on this side, you'll see cannons over here. This was called the Federal flank. Now, the cannons are representing Confederate cannons, as when the Confederates move through here, this will be one of their artillery positions, including the VMI cadet guns will be here briefly before moving forward farther on the battlefield. But that happens right here, right in the middle of the Valley Pike, right where we're standing. So the artillery that's over here, again, they're only here briefly as far as the Confederates, but they do include the VMI cadet battery, which is 4 guns under Captain Midge, who is a cadet. He is in charge. It is the first time that a cadet will be fully in charge of the VMI battery. Any other time, it was a professor of military rank that was in charge of the battery. But here at Newmarket, it is a cadet, and they do some great service. They will move farther up to the artillery position, what will be known as Battery Heights, which we will see briefly. They will move up there, and they will participate in repelling the Union cavalry that is going to charge down the Valley Pike toward us. All right, so we are standing on the Rice property. This is the Rice farm, and this is the Rice house. Now, obviously, there are modern things done to the house. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't realize it. You would think those pillars are historic. They are in a way, but they're not Civil War period. If you look at the house, you can actually see the original outline of where the porch was. But this house is super historic in a lot of ways. This is a headquarters for Franz Sigel. When he arrives here on the battlefield about noon, this is where he'll come to. But there's even other stories that happen here. In 1862, Stonewall Jackson's staff will be here in the house, but not Jackson himself. Jackson himself will actually camp out here on the grounds. The fence line you see down there was here. And the story goes that as Stonewall Jackson was out here, a torrential rain came in and flooded this area, pushing his tent down the hill and into the fence, wetting everything. His staff laughing some, as Jackson was pretty disheveled. He will then leave from here and go to the Strayer House in town, which is the Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Foundation headquarters. He had been offered to go there before, and after he is swept down the hill, he looks at his staff and says, perhaps we should go to the Strayer House, which he will do. And it's thought that he gives an interview there. His clothes are completely wet, and he is in one big jacket in the summer, and it is thought that Stonewall Jackson might have been nude under that jacket because everything else was wet while he's giving this newspaper interview. A little food for thought there. But the other things that happen here, this house will actually get struck by artillery, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. But this is a federal line. They are not here very long, as the Confederates are going to come pouring this way. On top of it, there will be artillery out here, artillery up here on this ridge and farther across, including a gun in the middle of the Valley Pike. That is the 30th New York Artillery, von Kleiser's guns. And what will happen is one of his guns will be disabled right here in the pike, right where we're at, and the wheel will sink into the Valley Pike, and he will have to drag it back toward Bushong's Hill in order to try to get it out. It will be captured. Of course, he will be able to move over to the slope of Bushong's Hill later, and the battle will continue. But let's go over on this side. The Rice family was here during the battle, and one of the neater things, this house is now preserved completely, saved, but one of the things at the time was that this house has been different things. There was a truck stop here. It was a mental institution for a little while, but during the Civil War, occupied. And if you look here, you can see the artillery shell that is in the side of the house. Now, that shell was fired and went through the house and actually landed in the parlor. After the battle, the shell did not explode. They came back out after the battle. The family put the shell back right there, and then you could see the brickwork they did around it just to seal it back in. What a cool piece of history. So we're standing here at the 54th Pennsylvania Monument. This is part of Bushong's Hill, believe it or not. It doesn't look like a hill, but if we were to go straight across, we would be on the federal line all the way to the top of Bushong's Hill. But the incident that happens over here has to do with the federal cavalry. They are stationed in this area. Now, they have moved back a little bit because toward the gap over there, along what's known as Smith Creek, the Confederate cavalry is over there, including Major Harry Gilmore. And Bowdoin's cavalry, it's a little windy, and Bowdoin's cavalry is over along Smith Creek, and they have some artillery, McClanahan's battery. They will see the federal cavalry here, and Bowdoin had talked Breckinridge into letting him go to Smith Creek to flank the Federal Army. The problem is it's raining, it's torrential rains, the area is flooded. He will cross over here by the gap, which is actually farther that way to get to the road. He'll cross there, but by the time he gets up here, he doesn't have a ford to cross. So he will unlimber the battery, McClanahan's battery, and they will fire into the Federals, causing the Federal cavalry to move. But that's all they can do. They can't do anything else because there's no place for them to cross. A little while later, as the Confederates are pushing toward Bushong's Hill, they will be over in these woods over here, which if we were in those woods going straight across, we'd end up at the Bushong house. But the Confederate artillery will be back up on a ridge there. You kind of see the houses in the distance. Right behind those will be the Confederate artillery. That is known as Battery Heights, including the VMI Cadet Battery. A charge of the Union cavalry will come straight down Route 11 and angle toward that area. There will be some Confederate infantry out there as well protecting the guns, but the guns are going to do great work. They are going to decimate the Union cavalry that is charging. That cavalry will then retreat and be out of the battle. They won't even be able to cover the retreat of the Federal Army after this. Of note, John C. Breckinridge is the one that places that Confederate artillery. So he is all over the field. You'll have Breckinridge up on Shirley's Hill. You'll have him in town, the shell-struck post. You'll have him over here with the artillery. Then he'll be back over here watching the charge of the cadets in the 51st Virginia as they come across the Field of Lost Shoes, which we'll go to in a little bit. But that happens right here. All right, so we are at the bottom of Rude's Hill. This is going to be toward the end of the Battle of Newmarket, really the end of the Battle of Newmarket. What happens here, there's a couple incidents that happen here, including a post-war incident, but we have Henry DuPont. He is a captain of artillery for Franz Sigel. He will do a textbook thing that they are taught during their time at the academy, but it's not done very often in the Civil War. In order to cover the retreat of Federal troops from Newmarket, DuPont is going to take his guns and leapfrog them one by one all the way up the hill until the Federals are into safety down toward Mount Jackson. He will do that all the way toward the town of Mount Jackson. Because of that, he gets a little bit of fame here. Does not win the Medal of Honor for it. He will win the Medal of Honor later at Cedar Creek. But he is here, and had he not done this textbook maneuver, the Confederates aren't going to be slowed down enough to be able to allow the Federal troops to retreat to the other Federal troops that are in Mount Jackson. When Sigel fights this battle, he does not use his whole force. There is still quite a bit of infantry in the town of Mount Jackson. But once they get across into Mount Jackson, they will burn the bridge, and that will end the Battle of Newmarket here. After the Civil War, right at the end, as a matter of fact, there is a post-Appomattox tragedy. You see the monument up there? That is the Summers-Koontz Monument. Summers and Koontz were Confederate soldiers. They were on their way home in May of 1865 after the war, and they will take some horses to get back into Page County, where they live. The Federals are not going to be happy about that, but the commander in this area will say, you know what, the war's over, there's been enough bloodshed, let's move on. He will leave to go to Washington, and his next in command, who was embarrassed by the horses being taken, will go and have Summers and Koontz arrested. They will be brought and hung and shot for being horse thieves. That happens after the war. Imagine living through the entire American Civil War, the bloodiest conflict in our history, only to be killed right after it because of a couple horses. All right, so we're on Rude's Hill, where I first got to actually meet Goober and that guy Bill. But anyway, Rude's Hill, a ton of history. We did a video here together. There's a November 15th, 1863 fight here. This is a camp. This is a hospital. But on May 13th, 1864, John and Bowdoin's cavalry is camped here on Rude's Hill. Now they can see the Newmarket Gap over here, which at the time would have been bare of trees. And while they're here, they see some troops come into that gap. These troopers are Union troopers under William Boyd. Boyd is up in the gap. He is looking for Franz Sigel's army. And Bowden and his soldiers, of course, are going to see him. They'll look through the eyeglasses, know they are Federal troops. And then Bowden will call to horse, and they will begin going down Route 11. They'll go into town right to the old crossroads, and they will make a left out towards Smith Creek. The reason they're doing that is they are going to go attack that Federal column. The problem for the Federals is, as Boyd is up there in the gap, he sees these troops down here, and he believes it is Sigel's army. His staffers and many of the men that are around him will tell him, no, that is the Confederates. Boyd will have none of it. It is the Federal army. The position that these troops are in here on Rude's Hill should let Boyd know that these are indeed Confederates, as their defensive position is opposite of what it should be. But he's still determined that these are Sigel's troops. He will find out very shortly when Bowden sets up a trap along Smith Creek and attacks his force as they come down the mountain. They will attack that force, capturing many of them, including several soldiers that try to run back up into the mountain. There will be some soldiers that get away and make it back to Federal lines days later. But many of those men will have to spend the night in the mountain, in the Massillon Mountain near the gap, and avoid capture from the Confederates. It'll be the first real battle that occurs right here in Newmarket on May 13th. Then, of course, the 14th, the contending armies will really start to come together. We'll have that skirmishing at the night. And then May 15th, you have the major battle of Newmarket. So we're now at the Field of Lost Shoes, and at the Confederate, this fence line is where the Confederates are. Now, where we're at particularly, this is Woodson's Missourians. They will be called the 62nd Virginia, but these are the westernmost troops that actually fight here in the Valley, and maybe even in Virginia, if I remember correctly. But Woodson, Charles Woodson, there's a post-war photo of him. His Missouri cavalry is made up of guys that have been wounded and things like that, have ended up in Richmond, Virginia. They are now the 62nd. They will be attached here to Breckinridge's men. And from right here, they will be sharpshooting at none other than von Kleiser's battery out there on the other side of the field. Along this fence line will be the VMI cadets. What ends up happening is that as the Confederates push, they are going to be decimated by the Federal artillery that is up here on Bush Hong's Hill. Because of that, they have to fall back. There will be a counterattack. Confederate artillery will stop the Federals. But during this fighting, a hole is going to emerge in the Confederate line. The only reserves that John C. Breckinridge has left are the VMI cadets. Now, the cadets, when they got here to Newmarket, they are up on Shirley's Hill, but they're in the rear. They are told to conform and run down that hill just like the other Confederates do, so they're not under immense fire. Now, you should note that they've been picked on the entire time they've been on the march with the veteran soldiers. And the reason is they're just boys, school guys. Some of them are in their 20s, but they're not combat veterans. However, when they come off of Shirley's Hill, they don't run. They march in perfect dress parade formation. It actually endears them to the veteran soldiers. When they get here to this portion of Newmarket, what ends up happening is that Breckinridge will say, put the boys in. He doesn't have any other choice. They will come in, they'll go around the Bush Hong house that's down here, split around that into this orchard, and line up along this fence. Now, they will not be the only Confederates here. Again, we're here with Woodson. You've got the 23rd Virginia across 81, the interstate. And then on this side Up here on the Confederate left, you will have the 51st Virginia. These men will be here facing the artillery and the 34th Massachusetts, the 1st West Virginia, and the 54th Pennsylvania, who we were at earlier. The firing here is intense. It's chaotic. There's smoke. It's pouring rain. I mean, it is devastatingly nasty. And what will happen is this field is going to be flooded and thick with mud. Under this intense fire, the Confederates are going to make a charge, including the cadets. They'll come up over the fence and charge the Federal guns. The cadets will actually capture one gun out in this field of von Kleiser's battery. They will capture a 12-pound Napoleon. On top of that, what they don't know is that the Federals at that time are starting to run low on ammunition, and the rest of the reinforcements are still in Mount Jackson. Franz Sigel is riding up and down Bushong's Hill, screaming orders in German. Most of his officers are English speaking, so they have no clue what he is saying. Most of the men are English speaking. They don't know what Sigel's yelling about. But a retreat has actually been ordered as this charge is being made. The guns are starting to pull back. There's no way these Confederates are going to know that. To them, they are about to go into the mouth of hell by right into the face of artillery. But the guns will begin to pull back. However, the 34th Massachusetts and the VMI cadets will meet on the field of lost shoes. There will be a slight hand-to-hand combat before the cadets are able to take the gun and drive the Federals farther out. After capturing that gun, there are several depictions and paintings, things of that, of them on the gun waving the VMI cadet flag, and they are no longer thought of as just mere children. They are now veterans of a battle. On top of that, VMI is the only school body to ever participate in an active battle as a school body. You will have troops from the Citadel in South Carolina firing on Federal soldiers on the Star of the West before the Civil War really begins. But this is the first time and only time that a school unit is called out, a military school unit is called out to fight in a pitched battle. All right, here we are at one of von Kleiser's guns. This is von Kleiser's battery, 12-pound Napoleon. Now, he had already lost one on the Valley Pike before this, but now he is going to lose this gun to the VMI cadets when they charge across this field of lost shoes. And the reason, we should have said this earlier, the reason it's called the field of lost shoes is, again, it is an absolute miry, just disgusting field when it rains. Even to this day, if we were to get rain right now, which we have had happen on the anniversary of the battle, you'll see it flood out there, and you'll see the shoes looking like they're going to come off of somebody's feet. And they don't do that on purpose. That just happens. The mud is so thick that it will suck the shoes off the charging soldiers' feet. Not just the cadets, but the 51st Virginia as well. Now, the cadets will capture this battery and this gun. The 51st Virginia will capture the guns on the hill up there. That's Carlin's battery. All these guns will have to retreat as fast as they can, so the Union are going to lose some. There will be small pockets of resistance during this charge. Again, the 34th Massachusetts will attempt to stop the VMI cadets, a little bit of hand-to-hand combat before they have to retreat. Also, you'll have another contingent on this windy day of Federals that'll come out of the woods up here behind the battery and try to flank into the Confederates, the 51st Virginia, but that will be very short-lived. It doesn't last very long. The Confederates take this position, and this will be a major victory here in the Shenandoah Valley for the Confederates, and once again prove the Shenandoah Valley to be an important theater of war and also a very big embarrassment to the federal arms that have been here coming through this valley since 1861. It will not be until later in 1864, just a couple weeks later actually, in June, that Federals will go down the Shenandoah Valley once again, go up the Shenandoah Valley once again, I apologize, and head towards Stanton. They will finally make it to Stanton. When they do, they will, on their way, go to Lexington. David Hunter, who's in command at that time, as Sigel's been removed, will burn the Virginia Military Institute barracks and the superintendent's house.